It's an absolute privilege to be speaking with you today. I've given one form or another of this talk in probably 100 different settings. However, I've never given it to a room full of people that have actually chosen to devote the majority of their practices to helping people like me. I truly believe that most of the people that do hear me speak do their very best to support those struggling with addiction. But regrettably, for one reason or another, they ultimately do that work as little as possible. I'm not calling them out for that. I actually get it. A good clinician's time is a very scarce and precious commodity. It literally breaks my heart when I see some of our most skilled clinicians sitting in their offices trying to keep themselves looking busy. Well, in reality, I know they've had 3 back-to-back no-show appointments. I'm the furthest thing from a religious guy you'll ever meet, but I think that anyone that chooses to work in addiction medicine is doing God's work. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for choosing to do the work that you do. To hell and back, how I turned my 2-decade-long entanglement with drugs into a career. My relationship with drugs was a visceral and intense one that lasted half my life. During that time, I've pretty well done everything you can possibly do with a drug. I have smoked them, I've snorted them, I swallowed them, I hot railed them, I booty bumped them, I injected them, I sold them, I imported them, I even dabbled in some light manufacturing. But when I do these talks, questions I often get seem to be centered around, you must have started very early to have all this experience. Now, the first time I got high, I was 25 years old. Another common question I get is, life must have been really challenging for you to start using drugs so intensely with limited opportunities. And unfortunately, no, not at all. My life was pretty decent. When I was a teenager, I started a greeting card company named Northern Cards. It was actually a huge success. We sold our products in 9,000 locations across North America. It was Canada's largest greeting card company. Life was going great. I had a big house, a fancy car, and I was financially set. When I speak about drugs, many people have said that I make it seem more like a relationship than the debilitating disease that it is. Well, at the time, that's how it felt. You know, it was a relationship. And unfortunately, it was a codependent, fairly toxic, and an abusive one, but it was still a relationship nonetheless. Of all the things I can say about my relationship with drugs, casual or temporary aren't on that list. It was a permanent thing. I was locked in for life. You know how the wedding vow goes, to have and to hold, to love and to cherish till death do us part? Well, that pretty much sums it up. I was not separated from my substances for one moment of that time. Wherever I was, so were my drugs. Maybe from the sounds of the story and even from my appearance, I got a great job working in an amazing hospital. I'm here telling my story at a fancy hotel at some national conference. How effed up could this guy actually be? And you might assume that this guy seems to have made it through his drug entanglement without too many negative consequences. Maybe I was like a Keith Richards type character, a guy that brags about doing hard drugs for 50 years and is still a rock star going strong into his 80s. Well, to that point, I'm no Keith Richards. However, that assumption might still be a little bit correct. I'm doing pretty well right now. But maybe the better question you might want to ask is, how were you doing in 2015? Because it was 2015 that drugs and I were about to celebrate our 20th anniversary together. I don't remember if the 20th anniversary is supposed to be silver or China or whatever that is. But in my case, it might have been the plastic year to commemorate the 10,000 plastic baggies I would have bought in the preceding 2 decades. Anyway, back to how I was doing in 2015. Not great at all. By 2015, I had been disowned by my family and friends. I had an inoperable heart infection. I was still endlessly trying to recover from an earlier endocarditis surgery and 7 different ICU admissions. In 2015, my latest drug of choice was meth and GHB. I injected meth every day and took GHB to come down. I had just recently been diagnosed with HIV. I was now a homeless, wanted fugitive living in the backseat of a stolen VW. So yeah, things weren't going that great. At this point, I had spent 3 years running from the police, and when I say I was running from the police, I'm not speaking in metaphors or talking about my endless battle with paranoia. I was actually running from the police. I had spent 3 years on Crime Stopper's most wanted list with a real $2,000 cash reward given to anyone that provided information leading to my capture. I had faced the same fate that so many of our patients face. My drug addiction had now been criminalized. So now, instead of looking to the system for help, I ran from it. So yes, in 2015, things were looking fairly bleak. But I was about to face an unexpected fork in that proverbial road of life, as they say. It was during my 8th ICU admission. I had reached the point where I was pretty knowledgeable about how these hospital discharges go. You go from being the sickest of the sick at one moment, then someone makes a decision, it's time for you to go and your discharge is imminent. When you reach that point, it kind of feels like you're staying at some fancy hotel, you've slept in until 2 in the afternoon, you get woken up by the hotel front desk calling you and telling you it's time to check out. Checkout time was 11 a.m. That's how these discharges feel, or at least that's how they felt to me. There was the usual parade of nurses and admins that came to my bedside dropping off scripts and attempting to coordinate where and when the home nurse would be coming to facilitate the 3 times a day of IV antibiotics I was supposed to be receiving. At this point, I just nodded, knowing full well I didn't have any money to pay for the scripts, and I was living in the backseat of that stolen Volkswagen, so, there was not going to be some random nurse meeting me up in my secret underground parking layer where my vehicle was stashed. But you go through the motions, and I was too ashamed to tell these innocent folks that they were wasting their time. I was pretty well ready to go at this point. One more person came by, but she looked to be about 60 years old. She looked much different than the usual crew. She looked like a tough, street-savvy lady. I don't know why, but I liked her instantly, and she hadn't even opened her mouth at this point. The first thing that I noticed about her that was different about her, it was the smell of cigarette smoke. It was so thick and so out of place. I mean, this was an ICU, for gosh sakes. The smell was so strong that I thought this lady must have been smoking in the hallway. I guess of all the ridiculously bad habits I've had in my life, smoking was not one of them, so I've always been sensitive to it. Anyway, back to my story about the smoking lady. She was a straight-to-it, no bullshit kind of lady. I will always remember that deep, gravelly voice of hers and everything that she said to me the first time that we met. Our interaction was short and to the point, and this is our entire chat, verbatim. She said, "My name is Joy, and I'm a caseworker." She continued, "I see you're a proud guy that has had some success in his life, and you have rejected every offer of assistance that we have ever given to you. And I understand this is your 8th ICU stay." I looked at her and nodded and said, "Yes, ma'am." Then she continued. She said, "I've been doing my job for 23 years, and I've never seen a patient that's been to the ICU 9 times. Then she had this long, deliberate pause. So long, I wasn't sure if she was expecting me to respond to that or she was going to keep speaking. So we just sort of stared at each other, but then she concluded. And she said, "Will you let me help you?" And I didn't answer right away. I really needed to ponder that question she was asking. But then I spoke, and I said, "Yes, I will let you help me." People ask me all the time what was so magic about this exchange. Why did I give this woman the time of day when I refused to engage with every previous offer of assistance? And I'm not sure, to be honest. Maybe it was timing, maybe it was her, maybe it was me, maybe it was because she didn't mention drugs. I really don't know. But what I can tell you about that moment, it was at that moment that I realized whatever pathway my life was on, it had failed. And I'm not sure that I believe in this whole epiphany thing, but this was as close to an epiphany that I was ever going to get to. It was time to let someone else have a shot at providing some input. And boy, letting her help, that was the best decision of my life. She got me on Ontario Works, which instantly covered the $2,300 per month I had been paying for my HIV meds. She found me a family doctor. She found me a place to live. And I moved out of that Volkswagen. She helped me get legal aid, and she found me a lawyer that believed in me and wasn't scared of me. And against all possible odds, the tiniest prospect of a salvageable future began to appear. That lawyer helped me navigate my legal issues. See, my legal issues were very complicated to me. a meth-addled, sleep-deprived guy that was clearly operating with a diminished capacity. However, in spite of willfully and admittedly doing that full laundry list of drug crimes that I shared with you at the beginning of my talk, I didn't get charged with any of those offenses. The 29 charges I'd been running from were actually based on someone else's drugs. I knew this, but I lacked the basic communication skills required to communicate this with my various lawyers. But my savior, Joy, looked at my disclosure and she was able to see what I was talking about, and she helped me articulate this to the new lawyer. So the new lawyer met with the Crown attorney, shared this information with them, and they withdrew all my charges. So just like that, my legal nightmare was over. There was nothing left for me to hide from. I was now a free man. No more bounty on my head. It's not that I was getting high because of my legal problems, but getting high certainly meant I wasn't able to address them. Now that my legal problems were addressed, my amazing caseworker, well, she had a special project for me to work on. She thought I should sign up for a training program to become a peer support worker. I remember thinking, like, I have no idea what that is, and frankly, it sounded like something I would be completely awful at. After spending 2 decades in my drug land, I could hardly navigate a conversation with a Tim Hortons cashier without screaming. How on earth would I ever be useful at providing guidance to others? But I owed Joy everything. If this lady thought I should walk to Alaska, I was going to do my damnedest to make that happen. But there was one small problem. I despised being high around people that were sober. Maybe Joy knew this, maybe she didn't. See, oddly enough, Joy and I never spoke about my drug use, not once, not ever. As the peer training started, my drug use lessened each day, using less and less. Then, without telling anyone, I decided to try stopping, not forever, but for a bit. I went through the worst withdrawal that I have ever seen. It made every one of my ICU stays seem like a common cold. But after about 7 days that felt like 7 months, and for the first time in 2 decades, I was free of substances. It was a brave, new, scary world I was entering. And that was the unofficial end of my 2-decade-long entanglement with drugs. Now, on to the great news part of this story, and please don't be sad for me. This isn't meant to be a sad story. I am the luckiest guy I know. Professionally, I did finish that peer training program and about 4 other similar programs. And it seemed like I won the peer lottery getting hired by St. Michael's Hospital and placed on the interprofessional team of their addiction medicine service. It was a new role. I don't think the hospital really quite knew what to do with me at first. And if I'm being totally honest, I really didn't know what I was doing there either. But I ended up finding my groove as a useful, valued contributor on the multiple teams in our organization. I didn't feel like a token in any way. I continued to take every training that I could, and I even returned to university to pursue addiction studies. And last summer, I started as a new role as a community case manager for our withdrawal management service, hoping beyond hopes that I can be 1% as good as Joy was and change someone's life the way that she changed mine. I have worked with the best of the best in terms of prescribers, psychiatrists, colleagues, mentors, managers, and leaders. St. Michael's Hospital has given me countless opportunities, and I would like to think that I've run with every one of them. Personally, I'm in the best relationship of my life. Then in 2019, I restarted my greeting card company, Northern Cards. While it's been a slow start, we are projecting to sell over 1 million cards in 2022. My partner and I bought a house together. I have to say, it's gone so well, I'm almost ashamed of my success, especially when I work with so many people every day that haven't gotten the smallest sliver of my good fortune. And that's how I turned my toxic relationship with drugs into a career. So thank you for allowing me the honor to share my story with you today. Thank you.